Homage to the Buddha Shakyamuni, homage to the wisdom warrior Manjushri, homage to all the lineage benevolent masters. Profound and subtle Dharma is rarely encountered in eons. Now we can hear and follow it. May we realize the Tathagata's meaning. To liberate all beings, please generate Supreme Bodhicitta before today's teaching.
Jordan de Dagana Dungar some Yazurto, some Kanjan, and the Tate, Dungar Chir Dungar Yatan, the Shichir Dungar Yatan, Jerry Dungar Yato, Korana, Mambala Muba Dazala, Jordan de Chichungamba Mambo, Shirderji Pombo, and Javar Sims of Sarate, the Namla Dr. Zinijan, Batcham Sarne, Jordan de Dr. Nyan Lendeba. Samjig de Giv Labjan, Sorjan, Sor de Jondan de Dachanam, Yang Lende Paternipe, Da Gavarjete, Pena Gavarjete, Sabale Chunda Jigete, Bacham Sarvena, Mambo Nipper, Semso, Division Shape, Dr. Mambala, Mubram Kento, Tila de Jondan de Giv Dachala, Yarver of Jagate, and the third division shall be Ishim Zoto. Geroji, Mafter, Maftan, de Jondan de Talam Kepi, Dr. Division Shop, Ishi Jim Zodo, Goftu, the Godna, Division Shop, Dr. De, Reva Mamchi, the Interter, Dr. Division Shop, Ningaland de Bardigi, La, Tang, Jend, Gibala, the Dr. Command, Giver and Sarto, Jondan de Dr. Shanghai Sanwa Jimbo Namla, the Honours of Ishi Sarne, Judia Jimbo Shed, the divisions of Ishi, Jetjang Ton de Newton, Newton, the Laga Jondan de Dr. de la Reva Mamchi, so the Chifina divisions of Batalam, Kepi Dr. Mubaraptim Kenny, Dr. Mansarva Marto, so Jondan de Kinder, Dr. La Jondan de Gifty, Young Bajik, so de Jondan de Dr. La divisions of Ishi Jirko, Karava, Cuba, Tambram, Soto, Tislata, Jena. Tichilata Jena. The star Dr. Division of Sharpi, young Tabala Moki, Dr. Mambala Muber Lato walk at the Jondan de Dr. Muber Tuber Zigne, Jondan de Dr. Lapshan to Sanwaji Giver Quatarto, Jondan de Dr. We give our number Nip Giver Sarte, Shan to Sanwa Namgim Dundo, Mamba Mubaji Capsate, Dr. San Gigi, Shan to Chimbola, young Tober, Jondan de Dr. Mubo. Tom Jenny Dirkiji Capsano Jondan de Dr. Dirkiji, the Reva, Mamchiba, Mansarva, Masamba, Maxorvaram Charla, Division Shabir, Division the Tamjim Jimbirumboji, Jim Jogo, then it's another number of Chimbuts chap. The Tosodo, Titanjara, Teran Dr. Jimbirson, Jayuta, Gonva, To, Zontuna, Dr. Dr. Gomser, Division, Mata, Kir, Ranchimum Choko Pombo, Sambam Chibana. Maxurvara, the Yitzim Gina, Ternite, Dr. Tamjitim, De Dumumser Jera, Jera Shiber Jero Majuna, Joshiba Namji Lenina, Payane, Kardim Chibana, Zanjir the Shinda, Mamaramchi, the Kavan Temperaturana, the Payante, Yan Gido Gondor, Legion, Magnon, Var, Yan Shibi Shoton, Shonsam, Sor, De Nete, Staven, Sorana, Jonjur Chimbo, Jandam, Chiba, Nondo, Bayonda, Dambana, Timberland, Raptorne, De la Senam Danam, Dromadan, Nordam Jordan Manshir, Shiradan, Lambochedan, Tadan Hon, Chon, Division of Shigdan, Valan Marte, Persian, the Vatana, Division of Sham, Tramo, Trampo Tramung, Beat, Somante, Tuxastungo, Mogi, Gerbo Lion Tedder, Na, Jonas, Sone, Paye, Jumbodan, John Jirvin, Tela. So Mambo, John Jirlan, Tarnger, the Gubam, the Mawana, Mambo Mambo, Tonda, Chibana, Titer, Matim, Jura, Dambana, Gajan Gobalana, Shendor, Imia, Jusimbe, Nyandam, some more of the Viker, the Governor Tinda Lutu, Lon, Don and Camney, Loyan Rapture, Lon and Dirter, Dalam Zon, the Mount, the Yod, Donam Chibitila, Nidina, never carried the Diva Shiba Tenati, Orajan, Starda Pora Kirena, Zedan Division Kunum, Survivor, Jondan Jonam, Sayang, Jis, Jones, Zamla, Ringan, Sorana, Jones, Nijan, Ringa, Chimmer, Nida, Shiba Tena, Janji. kimnar ke yanba tang no kubo li jiang yo kan na pamchi chongchir termchi jang sarma dang rapa chorwa sarma dang rapa chorwa dang ke pai kimde kalavara te im tharji ter shimbr jir ke den shikjang normal te go Gona sange te stanam chi chok ja chok tam kur war jod ti dan war na la yang lap chi je wo yod tan te yi kum yum ko da la la tang nor dang jom jang la la tang te la chang wan je la la chi dan pus rap da ton kim da te kim da rap gen do war wa din kim dim ton ne is dag na tang dar ka le chi tar gon don jar bo gam no lom bo gam yang na ni Gyuro maronji, tsarazon, si yang, zon manjir, chid, mati tertar, mati ternya semjam chubji la, gurur namji shirachang, kund, shikbo dina daga wamtone, sanke, chalam chi jang, gavaran jira, dina teyi, kandan zindar tang, jewa, gurbo dina chitte sho, teyi mola, mati zonwa dang, zonma tagda, tena jarvar jir, kurma chakbar, daksud nyevar, dagali zedang kuji chijik, Sha norman keba te item tone shiba loyut dun man la mu ngai jorwan dala tadma shedan dun dak paji yidmachi te isemjin omanjang kurangano yombo jaran thang kham gerwa yi zhe tinji mata kha ji tane se lewshit bai mati rab sur ji ngai ndana shigdar rwa tang chi dang chin dang shang marong gerwa nam shigdar shigbi shirang lewshu shi chodna alaya ninjer jambra sha mati ndarta bai jatu ne onde sa jukte da ti shig kimji Zhongdar zayi shirwane, kimji zhongdar zayi shirwane terane. Jenin digbra sheda karkong nawa nenar tagbra yang shigbo di jang jeba labde de mamba muba daki wanda na shagdang pongbor namna mshar sheda de le wabder kum shir togo de chamajanji ku dagan tsarne se de ikanda nyebaram chine na lerna mabshid jina rabda jo kyo le la yang ninjir shimbar sha de jan kengwa kuwa gang ninjir de lansa janji ze na kyo la vjina redang tsop matag jang shimbar Sha di tse ter te la shuni nam keba den lar yang rap ta choji don shin de le shu ji nga yi wei de yang te zum me de de wa ji jang wa ji chang ja te lo zhang ni se war de chang war yang me de le nam la bar ji de sar wa ji me de nam bar yit pa ne de na shir dam ro ma de jang kim de ni de rap de re bar ji re de na tam je rang ja zo re ji re don dang nor nam kan de yang de semenso de yimchi zhang de la ru ne shiba de na chig bur kyur ne da la long shun de ga yod me de ji gor bu san ba ta gar ji se semen ba de ndo shi ja chi ri ba na de na ba den zhan sa ne nam za wo nim shi mang bu kun sa ga de nor ba tham chen da la ta bur shi de jar bu zhong zhong chi ren mo zo chong ba mang bu ta jiang sa ne sun kur ji wi sun dir ke zi me ba da zhe wen de tor ne yin rong de ngan na lo zhang ngap chen chang war lo na ja da kum thong na ni shi le zhong chi ren de ji gi bur da ge tor de zu la ta da nan der chi so da nan nor de kin ji da bor te da da tham chen ma lin da Lahta da pai nur ki gung go ket par ki zhang zan da da gen jiang rap da jin na man ba mu dang pai yong dan da ngun ji gor jang pong ba zhan ne na me de shin da ngom sir to bar jir
Now let's begin studying the comprehensive and profound Lotus Sutra together carefully. Today's specific content from the sacred Lotus Sutra doesn't have much that's particularly new. Yesterday's interesting case, that memorable story, is retold today in the captivating form of a beautiful verse. Actually, there isn't really much new content today, so it should be entirely possible to finish it all at once. But I'm not entirely sure if I can completely finish it. I also haven't had the opportunity to read through all of it thoroughly, so I'll just talk about it very briefly for now, okay? And you can certainly take a good look as well. Some parts are easy to understand while others aren't so easy. The literal meaning of the Lotus Sutra seems the Chinese text is easy to understand. Actually, the Tibetan Tripitaka is especially easy to understand, while the Chinese, being classical, is harder to grasp. But sometimes when you look at it, it seems that some particularly important details are definitely much clearer and more comprehensive in the original Chinese text version. Today, I'll definitely continue directly right where I left off yesterday. Yesterday, everyone was indeed very concerned about the complex situation of this particular family, right? Of course, actually, there are many profound and deeply significant meanings here. According to some ancient great masters in China, there are also quite a lot of commentaries and annotations on the Lotus Sutra. I see that some of our Dharma friends should also be studying and translating them as well. In this particular way, some of the various methods of expression within it can be understood much more clearly and comprehensively. This time, I also cannot go into too much intricate detail. If I were to meticulously explain everything in comprehensive detail, and then carefully translate the profound teachings of many truly great masters, and then slowly and thoroughly explain them myself, it might indeed take a very, very long period of time. We also can't let our session drag on for too long. If it goes on too long, perhaps in the past, some great masters have lectured on the Lotus Sutra for 4 or 5 years already. Indeed, the Avatamsaka Sutra was also truly taught for approximately 10 years. There is such a significant history as well. But I think if we do it that way, everyone might get bored and lose interest. So we must finish within 2 or 3 years. Therefore, my explanation is neither particularly brief nor especially extensive. Basically, I will just go through the text as it is. In some particular places, perhaps my current understanding may indeed differ from yours. You can also certainly use your own preferred way of understanding, but this time, just the day before yesterday, I also attentively listened in when we had our comprehensive teaching review right here. Most people still seem to understand quite well and are quite focused. Actually, if each of you participated in the teaching review, it might be even better, especially for the lay practitioners outside. If everyone participated in the teaching review, then perhaps the level of seriousness would be different for each person. Some remain very focused throughout, because when it's your turn later, you might feel quite embarrassed or even somewhat ashamed. So people truly need this kind of effective method to genuinely stimulate the inherent wisdom and untapped potential that lies within themselves. This is indeed profoundly necessary. Now, let's continue with the next significant part. Yesterday, the 4 great elders, prominently led by the esteemed Venerable Kashyapa, thoughtfully made some important statements to the world-honored one. They openly shared some profound thoughts and insightful views regarding the Śrāvakayana, which is also known as the vehicle of the listeners. At the same time, they also gave an analogy. Why were they suddenly so quite joyful indeed? Let's now talk about the profound parable of the poor son. This poor son had indeed wandered for so many long years, but in the very end, he finally inherited his own rightful family estate. Here, the compelling story continues on. Yesterday, we truly said that the wealthy elder is equivalent to the Tathagata. We all sentient beings are indeed the Buddha's children, the spiritual children of the Tathagata. That's the reason for this analogy. The Tathagata often says, "My disciples, my children." Such expressions are often used. Now, Venerable Kashyapa, he then said this statement. The following brief and important verses for today are a summary by the esteemed Venerable Kashyapa. Many of the previous words may also have been from Venerable Kashyapa. Although all 4 of them went together, among the 4 there should be one who takes the lead, right? Perhaps this time it was Venerable Kashyapa who spoke before the Buddha. Venerable Kashyapa said, "World-honored one, we have 3 great sufferings. In Tibetan, there are 3 major sufferings: the suffering of change, and the suffering of conditioning. Because we sentient beings experience these 3 great sufferings, we are perpetually tormented in the relentless cycle of birth and death, constantly burning with numerous afflictions, suffering profoundly beyond all words. Moreover, all sentient beings are also deeply confused and utterly ignorant. They are also attached to some minor dharmas." Whether it is the realization of selflessness of persons or the worldly human and heavenly blessings of today, or things like humanistic Buddhism and so on. But today, the world-honored one asks us to deeply contemplate what exactly is being requested, eliminate the pervasive filth of all conceptual elaborations of dharmas. In other words, we are asked to remove the accumulated filth of all conceptual elaborations regarding these fundamental dharmas. Because when the impoverished and long-suffering son finally inherited his rightful legacy, the menial and often degrading work he had originally been compelled to do was actually not meant for him at all. It was profoundly right and entirely appropriate for him to pursue a different, more fitting path and engage in something else entirely instead. In precisely the same way, if we are currently attached to some minor dharmas, sometimes we find ourselves falling into the extreme of existence, and at other times we fall into the extreme of non-existence. This, in point of fact, is just another kind of extreme, a different sort of boundary. Therefore today, the truly compassionate Buddha very carefully and quite skillfully taught them the extremely profound and transformative Dharma of completely eliminating all conceptual elaborations. He said that when we truly and diligently practice within the sacred teachings of the Hinayana, because the Hinayana teachings generally require not sleeping during the early or late parts of the night, and practices like not lying down at night showing exceptional diligence, what is gained from this? One attains the significant wage of a single day of nirvana. As for the profound wage of a single day of nirvana, when the poor son diligently worked in the grand house of the wealthy elder, he would indeed receive some modest daily wages, just like earning a regular daily salary, a compensation for his efforts. In fact, the nirvana of the Hinayana is a brief temporary cessation, a temporary happiness. So, after attaining this, one truly feels great joy in the mind, having attained the profound fruit of arhatship, or the elevated stage of non-retrogression. At this time, we all experience immense joy. We become quite content with this, truly thinking that we have already attained the ultimate, profound nirvana. Then we think that if we are truly diligent in the Dharma, we will certainly gain especially much, gaining vast and abundant, indeed remarkable and significant results. Originally, our values were like this, but today the world-honored one already knows this kind of mindset of ours, that we have always been attached to the lesser teachings, and are content with the lesser teachings attached to the view of no self of the person. Because of this, for the time being, after seeing our own capacities and our very current situation, he let us indulge ourselves for a while, letting us act as we pleased for the time being. Isn't this just like the poor son from yesterday's story? For the time being, the old wealthy elder also felt that there was no way to let him directly enjoy the great inheritance. He allowed him to indulge himself fully and completely among a rough and unrefined crowd, just the same as he had done before. In actual fact, the Tathagata did not distinguish and explicitly say, "You all inherently possess the precious Tathagata Garbha." He did not openly proclaim it, nor did he clearly and unequivocally tell us that you already possess a significant share of the invaluable treasure of the Tathagata's profound wisdom and ultimate vision. Because at that time, the old wealthy elder saw this child. For the time being, he simply couldn't directly tell him, all of this inheritance is yours. He wouldn't be able to accept it. He would give up. So the Buddha also did not distinguish and tell them that each of you possesses a share of the Tathagata's treasure. He didn't say it like that. Therefore, the world-honored one spoke of the Tathagata's wisdom through skillful means at that time. So how exactly did he say it? Because the world-honored one, when truly facing these numerous sentient beings, spoke of the Tathagata's profound wisdom through skillful and compassionate means for their ultimate sake. What exactly do we receive from the Buddha? The daily wage of nirvana. It's like the poor son receiving his daily pay, or indeed like his profound happiness, which is truly just like his earned wages. For the time being, we, as individuals, are considering and we reflect upon these matters, because the Buddha, through skillful means, temporarily taught the three vehicles. We too, under his profound and insightful teachings, have indeed obtained the daily wage of nirvana, a temporary, fleeting, and transient nirvana. In actual fact, the daily wage of nirvana is truly, in essence, the old wealthy elder possessed an immense fortune, truly vast. If we consider just the wealth for a single meal, it is very insignificant within that great overall fortune. In the same way, the Tathagata's treasury of wisdom is incredibly abundant, and the realization attained by the Śrāvakas and Pratyekabuddhas is also extremely small in comparison. But for the time being, it has to be this way. For us sentient beings, if we were to be directly taught about the Tathagata's great emptiness and great luminosity, none of us would be able to accept it. So, for now, we are taught about the 10 virtuous deeds, or temporarily taught some skillful means for us sentient beings. This is also the case. We truly think of this as an especially and remarkably great karma that we achieved indeed. We who are of the Śrāvaka disposition, meaning those who are hearers and disciples of the lesser vehicle, do not particularly aspire to or actively seek out the profound and expansive Mahayana Dharma. And yet, despite our initial inclinations from the compassionate and enlightened Tathagata, we have indeed obtained a great deal of profound and invaluable wisdom, far exceeding our expectations. Because of having gained such wisdom, we expound and teach for the benefit of bodhisattvas, but in reality, we ourselves have no aspiration for this within. Because, as arhats of the lesser vehicle, in fact, we received many Mahayana teachings in the presence of the Buddha, including some of the teachings given at that time as fundamental doctrines of complete non-self and the deeply illusory and impermanent nature of all existing things. But we carefully received them, we, of Subhuti and Venerable Kasyapa. They too, before bodhisattvas with Mahayana potential or beginners who have just aroused bodhicitta, would expound and teach the Dharma. However, they themselves believed that their own nirvana of the lesser vehicle was the ultimate. They did not make efforts toward the ultimate nirvana of the Mahayana, nor did they arouse bodhicitta or aspire to it. There was nothing like that. What is just the reason for this? The Buddha knew that we, these beings of the lesser vehicle, still delighted in the lesser teachings. So, using skillful means, he followed us and taught in this way. But we did not realize this, and still thought we were true children of the Buddha. In reality, we had not yet reached the level of being true children of the Buddha. As everyone universally knows, generally speaking, the Śrāvakayana practitioners believe that their own vehicle is indeed the ultimate. But when measured against the truly ultimate and profound Dharma of the Buddha, in actual fact, they are not yet considered true, genuine children of the Buddha. It is only today that we have come to understand this. The world-honored one's wisdom toward us, toward all of us. This prose section is a bit more difficult to understand. You should be absolutely clear about this. Whether we are Śrāvakas or Mahayana Bodhisattvas, the world-honored one has never been stingy with his great wisdom toward us. He has expounded the 3 turnings of the Dharma wheel to us with complete impartiality. There has been no stinginess at all indeed. Why do I say this? Because in the past we thought we were true children of the Buddha, but in reality we were merely attached to some minor teachings. If our minds truly delighted in the greater and more profound teachings, then we would find true joy. Or if we were truly willing to give rise to bodhicitta, in actual fact, the Buddha would have taught us the profound Mahayana Dharma just the same. The crucial key lies deeply within ourselves. It's not that the Buddha is unequal or stingy, or that the Buddha refuses to transmit the Dharma to us. That's not the case. Why is that? If he were to directly teach me the greater teachings, I wouldn't be able to accept them. So when we teach the Dharma to others, or explain some Buddhist principles to others, the key is to observe the other person's capacity and understanding. This is very important. Otherwise, nowadays, some of us haven't even fully figured out what kind of individual this truly is, their entire comprehensive cultural background, their deeply held religious beliefs, and even their unique customs and traditions from either the East or the West. When we have no understanding of any of these things, we just say, "Come, come, do you want me to teach you the words of my prefect teacher?" As soon as we meet someone, we hand them some very profound, esoteric Dharma texts. This might not necessarily be beneficial. We still need to fully understand this, and it is very important to grasp its significance. Just like some other prominent religions in the world nowadays, when they actively promote their specific doctrines and core beliefs to us, they actually first try to carefully get a comprehensive sense of the current situation. They observe what kind of people we are. If we are a group of truly uneducated people, they will use methods suited to speak to us. If we are indeed a group of intellectuals, then they will also naturally use language that intellectuals truly prefer to communicate with us. Therefore, as devoted Buddhists, sometimes things are still relatively quite okay now, thankfully. But back in the year of 70s, 80s, and even 90s, some of us Buddhists, quite honestly, truly, might not have known anything except Amitabha. Many people were very superstitious indeed at that time. Others often said that Buddhism was superstitious. But we Buddhists ourselves were also rather confused and muddled. We didn't know what faith was, what liberation meant, or even what Buddhism really was. Now, quite a few people are aware of these things, but there are still some individuals who are indeed especially confused by this. They don't consider the true Dharma to be Buddhism, and instead focus on superficial things that aren't the real teachings. They pay special attention to and promote these appearances. In the end, they themselves also, eventually, spend a lot of energy and wealth on this, including their own time and so on. But what do they actually gain in the end? It may not necessarily be liberation. Even if they don't attain liberation, it's also acceptable to experience some happiness in this very life in one's heart and mind. But for some, even that is not guaranteed. That's why it's crucial for us to first establish a clear direction. No matter what we do, even our own spiritual practice requires a clear sense of purpose. Relying on qualified teachers and seeking the Dharma, these should be examined by own wisdom. This is extremely important. So here, the difference between the Mahayana and Hinayana teachings. In the Lotus Sutra, this is discussed quite extensively. If you look at what's discussed here, the Buddha is not being stingy. But because some of us are content with the lesser teachings, he only teaches them that. If our faculties are mature, however, the Buddha will also impart the profound Mahayana teachings with truly complete impartiality. In this particular sutra, now in this sacred scripture, the Buddha has already clearly and definitively taught the profound and universal one vehicle. Whereas in the distant past, in front of the assembled bodhisattvas, there were often harsh criticisms of the Śrāvakas. It was often said, "You Śrāvakas are simply content with the lesser teachings." There were frequent slanders and harsh reproaches directed towards him, but in actual fact the Buddha profoundly believed that these criticisms and negative remarks were indeed valuable and effective ways of teaching within the profound Mahayana Buddhist tradition. So we say, originally there was absolutely no intention or desire to seek anything at all. For this profound and fundamental reason, there was, from the very beginning, no aspiration or longing whatsoever for the profound and expansive teachings of the Mahayana Dharma. But today, the Dharma King's great treasure has arrived naturally. In other words, the Buddha has graciously bestowed upon us this truly magnificent and invaluable great treasure. To receive such a profound gift without actively seeking it is indeed an exceptionally rare and fortunate occurrence. Therefore, as devoted children of the Buddha, we have indeed already obtained everything we ought to have. Just like the poor son, what is it that he should rightfully receive? It is, in fact, the vast and precious inheritance that is rightfully owned by his very own father. In our specific case, that is to say, Venerable Kashyapa and all the other disciples firmly believed and understood that what we ourselves are truly and rightfully entitled to, we genuinely never expected it to be so incredibly simple today. This profound happiness has indeed come so very suddenly, hasn't it? Many, many people are now saying, this profound happiness has truly come so very suddenly. And in the end, happiness leaves just as suddenly. Happiness truly comes for just a while, and after a meal, it leaves again. But that really shouldn't be the actual case here, should it, right? So at that particular moment in time, he was absolutely and extremely joyful indeed, because they had truly received the divine blessings or profound wisdom of the Lotus Sutra. They were truly delighted and grateful. Actually, from a different and insightful perspective, every single person present here in this moment is fundamentally the same. If in this very precious life, before the inevitable act of departing from this human world, we are fortunate enough to truly obtain and grasp the profound teachings of the Lotus Sutra, we too should be very joyful and truly happy about this wonderful situation indeed. Because this sacred and profound Dharma truly is extremely and genuinely beneficial for our daily spiritual lives and for our ultimate and complete future liberation as well indeed, bringing us lasting peace and eternal joy throughout our spiritual journey. There are even some individuals in this very present existence who unfortunately do not have the precious opportunity to personally receive and embrace the profound teachings of the Lotus Sutra, but through simply listening to its sacred words and profound wisdom, studying and diligently reciting it, or actively using it to help liberate and empower others, the merit derived from this is also truly immense and significant indeed. There is a fascinating story that says in the distant past there was an individual named Huixian, a truly remarkable person, who became a monk from a really young age. After ordaining, he then continuously read the Lotus Sutra. After carefully reading the profound and insightful Lotus Sutra, it certainly seems that perhaps his beloved parents had already tragically passed away when he was still quite young, or something similarly impactful had occurred. He diligently kept reading it for many, many long years. Then once, in a remarkable state of radiant clarity, he truly discovered. What exactly did he discover? It seemed that he had a rather profound and meaningful conversation with his father. His father explicitly stated and explained that it was precisely because he diligently recited this particular scripture that when he initially and earnestly started reading it for the very first time, it was revealed that his esteemed father had already successfully attained the second heavenly realm, a significant spiritual achievement. He then solemnly declared that it was precisely because you diligently kept reciting the sacred texts and prayers that his father was miraculously able to be reborn into the serene Pure Land, a truly remarkable spiritual transformation. He recited it 1,000 times, or something very much like that. His beloved mother was also reborn in the pure realm of Akshobhya Buddha. He himself would also certainly attain it. Later, many other individuals who were reborn, including those with such auspicious signs, also attained it. That's why, in ancient times, people often recited the Lotus Sutra in front of the graves of the deceased. They would often recite the sacred Lotus Sutra to help the deceased attain ultimate liberation. Reciting this to help the deceased is actually a very good and effective method. It is said that there is another story. There were two monks, one recited the Lotus Sutra, and the other recited the treatise on the 10 stages. Vasubandhu wrote a commentary on the treatise on the 10 stages, which explains the 10 stages sutra. They had a very good and strong relationship. They mutually agreed that if one of them unfortunately died first, the deceased, because of reciting the sacred sutras, should have some truly special abilities. They agreed that after passing away, each would inform the other where they had been reborn. Both of them had made this agreement with each other. But later, it gradually became apparent that the dedicated person who had diligently studied the profound treatise on the 10 grounds had, unfortunately, already passed away. For a considerably long period of time, there was absolutely no news or communication from them at all. Then much later, once in a significant dream, he unexpectedly received some crucial feedback. It was clearly stated that after he had departed from life and passed on, because he was incredibly arrogant and deeply conceited and did not consider past or future lives at all, for this very significant reason, King Yama temporarily placed him in a dark, confined room. He couldn't possibly get out and suffered immensely for a very long period of time. Later, his devoted friend often diligently recited the sacred Lotus Sutra while constantly thinking of him with deep affection. With the blessing power of this recitation, if light was emitted, it allowed him to attain liberation. He sincerely hoped his dear friend would truly recite it 100 more times for him. In another 3 full years, he too would be reborn into the sacred Pure Land. After some more time, he was also reborn there. At that time, he came to welcome him, and so on. There are many such auspicious and positive signs. So, whether for the benefit of the deceased or for those who have already passed away, reciting the sacred Lotus Sutra is indeed extremely important. In this very life, we also live joyfully and contentedly. When I first started teaching the Lotus Sutra on that particular day, at that particular time, my beloved mother had just recently commenced her teaching career, specifically starting on the 6th of June. It is with a heavy heart that I recall my dear mother actually passed away on the 5th of June. Consequently, in recent years, whenever I have had the opportunity to give a teaching, even though she couldn't understand Chinese, she would still listen for the transmission. She was always very concerned about the Samantabhadra's aspiration prayer and other teachings before and after. I mentioned before that after I finished teaching the Medicine Buddha Sutra, I would teach the Lotus Sutra. If you could listen to the whole thing, it would be very good. Later, she promised that she would definitely listen to it all. But then, on June 5th, she had already passed away. And then on June 6th, when I was in the process of reading the Lotus Sutra, I experienced a feeling of sadness in my heart. I reflected on the situation and thought that, originally, she had truly wanted to listen to this today. But she had already left and there was nothing I could do. So I think it was in the afternoon. While I was preparing for the lesson in the afternoon, I thought about it for a bit. Later, I just took a nap and then fell asleep. After I had fallen asleep, I don't know if it was just my own thoughts, a figment of my imagination, or perhaps something else entirely, but I distinctly heard my mother's very familiar and comforting voice say with a gentle tone, "I'll also listen to today's lesson." I was incredibly surprised, truly taken aback by this unexpected declaration, and suddenly, with a jolt, I woke up from my slumber. After I woke up, I wondered whether it was real or just my own thoughts. I really don't know. Originally that night I wanted to say something, but since she had just very recently passed away, I was feeling a bit sad inside. The things I said in class, maybe people wouldn't necessarily believe them. Maybe it's true, maybe it's not, I really don't know. If she was reborn in the heavenly realms or something like that, maybe she would have that kind of freedom. But for ordinary beings in the bardo, maybe the 49 days haven't even passed yet. For some, even on the second day after death, they might not have even experienced the days of luminous meditation yet. They might not have that kind of freedom, no matter what indeed. Maybe all of this is just my own thoughts arising from longing. Perhaps it's just that causes and conditions are unfathomable. It's hard to say. You don't need to tell others about this either. Actually, sometimes I also deeply consider and really think about this, whether it's truly about our very own parents, always. Or our own beloved relatives and cherished friends. When they eventually leave this world, we sincerely hope they can truly gain significant benefit. By teaching and explaining the Dharma, by listening to the Lotus Sutra, it may look like just a very thin Dharma book in reality, but in reality it truly contains very profound wisdom and dependent origination. So now that we have indeed obtained a human body, and we are holding this Dharma book, this particular cause and condition is truly quite incredible. Everyone should feel genuinely joyful as well, indeed. Sometimes, when it's truly the right time to be genuinely happy, we should indeed really be quite happy. If today we unexpectedly gave you a really valuable 300 yen meal voucher completely for free, wow, I would definitely be so incredibly happy and truly grateful. But when we gain some significant merit, if we don't feel anything, that's not so good either. So sometimes having a sense of joy is also very, very quite important indeed. With a joyful heart, our merit will also increase. For example, if each of us were to obtain a wish-fulfilling jewel, the value of such a wish-fulfilling jewel truly is not only something we can enjoy in this life, but also in future lives. All sentient beings present here have the continuity of life. We shouldn't just think that as long as we have food and drink right now, that's enough. We shouldn't think that way. We should definitely take full responsibility for the continuation of our precious lives. Obtaining such a valuable Dharma treasure is, of course, extremely important indeed. Everyone present here also understands this principle. Otherwise, we truly haven't ever asked anyone for anything, like, could you just come and attend a class? We haven't said that to anyone. Each and every person is attending this class with a profound sense of responsibility toward all sentient beings and also toward themselves. So, next, let's briefly and clearly retell the story from yesterday, just once more. As for some of the specific parts of the story, there were certain details in yesterday's prose version that weren't particularly clear. They are also clearly explained here. Venerable Kashyapa thoughtfully retells the profound meaning again in a detailed verse form, thereby reiterating the essential meaning once more for everyone. If we ourselves were to attempt to write it, it would indeed be very difficult to accomplish. His choice of words is truly exquisite. It's the same in the Tibetan version as well. If we use verses to recount yesterday's story, actually that's also very good. Different sentient beings have different aptitudes. Some people naturally prefer prose and truly develop strong faith in the spiritual teachings through it. Some people prefer verses instead, and they develop deep faith through verses. That's exactly why we are carefully presenting it here in verse form. It says, "Today we have truly heard the sacred voice and profound teachings of the Buddha, and we are genuinely filled with great joy and immense enthusiasm." Such a profound joy is something we have truly never experienced before in our lives. The Buddha has said that the Śrāvakas will become Buddhas in the future and has already given this prediction. Moreover, we have obtained the supreme treasure. This kind of precious treasure was gained without even seeking it. The primary and most significant reason for our immense and profound joy is that previously we genuinely did not know that we could truly attain Buddhahood, but this time such a clear and unequivocal prediction has been made very, very clearly. Next it says, for example, there was a young boy. When he was a very young child, because he was truly very ignorant, he completely abandoned his own father and simply ran away. Yesterday we truly wondered how exactly did he manage to leave. In fact, this particular child was very unfilial. He completely cast aside his own father and then left entirely on his own. So how old was he at the very least at that specific time? By that time, many people were quite concerned yesterday. He only began to inherit the family estate at the age of 70. There was hardly any time left for him to enjoy it. Many people truly couldn't sleep last night because of this particular event. They felt that this old man, throughout his whole life, never found a good job or a good family. He truly didn't find anything at all, absolutely nothing of value. In the end, it was only at the age of 70 that he himself was about to die. He didn't have any direct descendants or rightful successors to his estate either, so some individuals in the community simply couldn't find peace or sleep soundly at night, as they were constantly worrying about his well-being and the implications of his situation. Actually, it was this young child, a mere boy, who ran away from his home entirely on his own. Subsequently, he embarked on a long and arduous journey, eventually making his way to a very distant and unfamiliar foreign land. The heartbroken father kept desperately searching everywhere for his beloved child after he suddenly left. More than 50 long years had already slowly passed. The devoted father missed him so terribly. He searched in all directions, east, south, west, and north, in every single country and every city. By the very end of his exhaustive search, he was utterly and completely exhausted. Finally, after a long and arduous journey, he settled down in a bustling city. He eventually started living there peacefully by himself in that comfortable place. After settling down, he built his own house. Then he subsequently started a successful business venture, which ultimately did quite well. He had originally come to this place to find his lost child, but in the end, he ultimately settled down in this very city. He ended up possessing all kinds of material enjoyments, all wealth, pleasures of the senses, everything imaginable. His family fortune became especially very abundant. He had all sorts of magnificent treasures, gleaming gold, shimmering silver, precious agate, and enormous clamshells. It truly seems like yesterday there was absolutely no mention of giant clamshells, but in the verse today these giant clamshells suddenly appeared. Pearls, valuable lapis lazuli, as well as elephants, horses, cattle, sheep, and sedan chairs. Sedan chairs are a specific kind of transport that are typically carried by people, carefully lifted by hand. It truly seems like we've encountered this particular concept before, haven't we? And in addition to those, there were also various carriages. He possessed extensive fields and a considerable number of servants as well. He had all sorts of people in his private service. Brahmins, Kshatriyas, and so on. There were many, many different people from various social backgrounds. Moreover, all his valuable family assets, his substantial income and significant profits, that is, all the constant comings and goings of his accumulated wealth, including the fact that his wealth was spread throughout the entire country. Just like we talked about yesterday, he had already established highly successful branches in every single country worldwide. Some of his diverse family businesses, and also some trusted merchants, experienced traders and wealthy business people, because when engaging in significant business endeavors, the prominent and influential participants, those big players, would also inevitably come and go, constantly coming and going without end. He also had countless people, indeed tens of millions of individuals, under his influence and command. Anyway, it just means there were a lot, not necessarily billions. A truly immense number of individuals held profound respect and deep admiration for him. Even several powerful kings and influential rulers frequently paid very special and considerable attention to his words and actions. Back when Jack Ma couldn't get a job, nobody truly cared about him at all at that time. Now at one moment President Obama meets with him, and then the very next Premier Li Keqiang also meets with him. Honestly speaking, I personally find it quite a bit emotionally hard and difficult to watch comfortably. Think about Jack Ma in the past, when he was desperately looking for a stable job during those difficult times. Who truly cared about him? So you can clearly see, even powerful kings are very much concerned about him now, indeed. And all sorts of influential ministers, powerful and prominent families, and the extremely wealthy individuals. And there are indeed many, many other truly incredibly important and significant figures and personalities as well. Indeed, these noble people consistently show him special and profound respect. Whatever he might say, just a single word from him truly settles everything completely. Because of this very particular and quite specific reason, many high-level people are constantly coming and going around him on a daily basis. It was exactly like this in ancient times, and it's still precisely the same exact way now. When a person is generally noble or extremely wealthy, powerful or highly talented, everyone immediately starts to flatter, praise, and show great respect to them. They all try to get very, very close to him, but once that individual falls into deep and utter poverty or becomes truly and utterly miserable, no one will look kindly upon him at all, not even a little bit. Even his very closest friends and dearest family members, including his own beloved children, will ultimately abandon him completely. People can be very realistic, extremely realistic at times. Perhaps we ourselves indeed. if we lack much life experience, might not realize this. But if you do have life experience, when you find yourself in a truly elevated and respected position, everyone around you tends to treat you with immense warmth and genuine enthusiasm. However, once you unfortunately fall into a state of profound poverty and hardship, at that particular point, everyone may actually look down on you with complete disdain. Situations exactly like this do indeed happen quite frequently. So this elderly old rich man, even right now, because he is so extremely wealthy and affluent, he possesses such remarkable power, such impressive capability, and such extensive connections. He is truly an exceptionally gifted individual. However, it is also important to note that he is already quite advanced in years. He very often sits and thinks deeply about his only beloved son, missing him constantly day and night. He always sadly thinks, when I eventually die, I'm already at such an advanced age. He's at least 80 years old. I've been carefully calculating his exact age, paying very close attention to it, but at the very least he's definitely 80, I think probably 70, maybe 80. He should be approximately over 90 now, at least definitely by now indeed. In his 90s or something. Huh? Over 70? That simply can't be right at all. They were completely apart for 50 long years, and then he quietly stayed at home for 20 more years. If he's still in his 70s, then father and son would be exactly the same age. This confusing part isn't clearly explained. I'm just saying, actually, whether it's actually mentioned specifically or not, I just really care about him very deeply indeed. Whether it's properly explained clearly or not isn't really the main important point here. What exactly is his current age? Didn't I just clearly say it? So if he's in his 70s, he sadly thinks, I'm about to die soon. How is it here in this very place? Look closely. His impending death is undeniably near. If his death is indeed near, then why would it be said like this? If he's only still in his early 70s, then his final time hasn't really come yet. But if he's already over 90 years old, right, then that's generally acknowledged and understood. He just thinks to himself, my truly unfilial son, my incredibly foolish son, has completely abandoned me and left me all alone. Actually, as was mentioned yesterday, sometimes he feels deep compassion for him and sometimes he really blames him. Here, he also clearly and indeed says, my truly unfilial foolish child. He abandoned me and it's already been over 50 years. So now what should I do with my warehouses, my treasures, all these things? There's absolutely no one at all whatsoever to inherit them. Sometimes when he thinks about it, when he reflects on it, it's really quite incredible. While he was missing his son like this, the poor son was also diligently searching for food and clothing. He journeyed from city to city, from country to country, seeking sustenance. Sometimes he barely managed to get some basic food and simple clothing, and sometimes he got absolutely nothing at all whatsoever. He was very often extremely hungry and severely emaciated himself. He even had some painful sores and terrible skin diseases on his frail body and so on. He went through a lot, little by little, in this way. In the very end, after gradually experiencing all kinds of profound suffering and hardship, he finally arrived in the bustling city where his beloved father lived. There he was also constantly working as a hired laborer. In other words, he was always diligently doing various odd jobs. He consistently kept working there, sometimes successfully managing to find additional work. Some workers today are like this too. And some people just can't seem to find stable work and are forced to keep doing various odd jobs. The other day there was a fellow villager, a good friend of mine, who had previously worked on building toilets at our college. For the next 2 full years things seemed to proceed quite smoothly and favorably for him. However, during this current year, it became clear that none of the various construction teams or crews were interested in working with him. He has his own small construction team. Every day he waits at my door, begging me to see if I can help him find a project. I told him, no, all the projects have already been contracted out this year. Besides, I am not personally in charge of the toilet construction projects at all. But he kept coming back repeatedly, again and again, always. Sometimes when you are seeing people in this kind of situation, you truly do feel quite sorry for them. After a considerable journey traversing various landscapes and covering a significant distance, he eventually arrived at the very residence where his father had established his home. At that very moment he looked intently through the elder's grand and ornate doorway, and clearly saw the venerable elder sitting serenely under a truly magnificent and precious banner, comfortably seated upon a majestic lion throne, and completely surrounded by a multitude of devoted and attentive people, including some of his attendants and so on. They were meticulously calculating his gold, his silver, and all his precious treasures, his entire wealth and valuable assets. There were also some notes and records, which were very likely his various bills and vouchers, meticulously kept and detailing his financial transactions. All these significant comings and goings of wealth, as I briefly mentioned yesterday, fundamentally indicate that his family possessed a substantial amount of valuable treasures and operated several prosperous businesses, demonstrating their considerable financial standing and influence. If we put it in today's terms, the wealthy old man was a very big successful entrepreneur indeed, so there was always a lot constantly going on. Back then, in ancient times, there were absolutely no credit cards. Everything was done with treasures and bookkeeping, that sort of thing. Otherwise, nowadays, you generally wouldn't see this kind of thing. If that poor son was watching, he truly wouldn't be able to perceive any of it at all. At this very moment, the impoverished son saw his father, who appeared exceptionally noble, dignified, and extraordinarily wealthy. He pondered deeply to himself, "This is undoubtedly a magnificent and powerful king. By a strange twist of fate and sheer accident, I've unexpectedly found myself within the grand and opulent palace of a king." In the Tibetan version, it clearly says the minister. Here it says someone equal to a king. So he thought either he's a very powerful king or he's someone truly on par with a king, someone of that considerable and significant stature. Then he became very frightened and blamed himself. How exactly did I end up in this particular situation? It's truly quite unfortunate that I came here today. He thought to himself in secret, if I were to remain here for an extended period, I am quite sure I would be punished or compelled in various undesirable ways. Maybe they'll arrest me and throw me in jail and so on. He became extremely frightened. At this very moment, after he had completely finished his deep thinking, he wanted to escape immediately from the situation. As he was quickly running away, he diligently tried to find out about some significantly poorer places. Perhaps he was somewhat clever and astute, though certainly not exactly a very smart or brilliant person. But he thought to himself, if I were to suddenly and abruptly run away from this situation, it would be a little bit... So he carefully asked, where exactly are the places where poorer people typically go to seek and find work? Using this as a perfectly plausible excuse, he meticulously planned to go out and diligently search for employment there. At this precise moment, the venerable elder got down from the elevated lion's throne and saw the child from afar. When he saw the child, he silently recognized him. You see, it wasn't explicitly stated yesterday. At the time, I also thought he must have recognized him silently. Perhaps his beloved son had a distinctive birthmark or some other unique identifying feature on his face. Otherwise, after being apart for more than 50 long and eventful years, it would indeed be very, very difficult to recognize him. At our memorable class reunion after 20 wonderful years, in the end, many people didn't recognize each other anymore. Our class monitor at that particular time had a significant amount of facial hair. He then came over to shake hands with each of us, saying, "Hello there, hello to everyone." No one at all recognized him. Everyone was thinking, who exactly is this guy? Later on, he finally said, "I am Luo Songkhegen." "Ah, you're Luo Rongkhegen?" Everyone was truly surprised by this revelation. So, after being apart for 20 long years, that's usually how these reunions unfold. Perhaps his child possesses some rather unique and special qualities. Maybe there's something about exactly where they are, right? Anyway, he had already recognized him quite quietly. And it wasn't somewhere close by, it was a bit farther away. Otherwise, if the distance between them were indeed close, he would have run away already, making his escape. He had already recognized him, clearly identifying the individual, and immediately after that realization, he gave the order for his attendants to promptly bring him back to his presence. At this point, the poor man was extremely frightened. In the very end, he completely fainted and then collapsed heavily to the ground. He simply thought, if they're coming to catch me, there must be a good reason. I must have done something terribly wrong just now. They must truly want to kill me. He was especially and profoundly terrified at that moment. At this particular juncture, he articulated his thoughts and feelings, expressing himself clearly and concisely. I journeyed to this location with the specific intention of acquiring essential provisions, including various articles of clothing to wear and a sufficient quantity of sustenance, such as nourishing food items, to sustain myself during my stay. That's probably exactly what he truly meant to say, right? At this particular point in time, how does the wise elder actually respond? Sometimes right in the middle, why would I actually need some clothes and food to bring me all the way here to this very spot? I came to this particular place specifically for the essential needs of food and clothing. Perhaps that was exactly what he was thinking deep in his heart. He probably just fainted at that very moment indeed. Maybe he was initially scared before and then he eventually arrived here. He probably fainted afterwards throughout the whole process. The elder realized that this child was both ignorant and especially lowly. He also didn't believe what he said, nor would he acknowledge him as his father. At this point, the elder came up with a skillful means. He sent out other people, and the ones who had caught him earlier, the very first time, he sent his own people to catch him. The second time around, he sent different individuals. What kind of other people specifically? Those individuals with significantly poor eyesight, such as the truly one-eyed ones, or those who are noticeably hunchbacked, meaning they are very, very short in stature, or perhaps quite ugly, completely lacking any real power or inherent dignity. They also looked particularly frail and quite haggard, appearing noticeably worn and exhausted. They didn't possess any significant influence or real authority whatsoever, just two ordinary people, seemingly quite insignificant. It truly seems like these two individuals went to that specific location yesterday. They then proceeded to inform him quite clearly that he could indeed have a job opportunity right here. The primary job was to clean up all the dung. If he were to take on this job, he could potentially get quite a lot of extra additional pay then indeed. So when all sentient beings drift through endless samsara cycles, there are actually all kinds of different situations truly possible. It should also be clearly mentioned in the famous praise of the Buddha's deeds. Praise of the Buddha's deeds. Alas, the vast ocean of birth and death, the endless and perpetual cycle of rebirth. Sentient beings are deeply submerged in the long flow, drifting aimlessly with no secure place to truly rely upon. If sentient beings are submerged in the long and ceaseless river of birth and death for an extended period of time, there is no real and genuine freedom to be found. Drifting with no one to rely on is truly, truly pitiful. We sentient beings have always been in the long, everlasting current of samsara, and there is no true, genuine freedom. Just like the wandering lost child mentioned earlier in our discussion, he might be in the human realm for a while, and in the depths of hell for a while afterward. The 50 long years we talked about yesterday in detail, they were gone for a full 50 years, and this indeed actually refers to the 5 or 6 realms of existence, and it also truly has the meaning of the 5 realms. The human realm, the heavenly realm, if you combine the heavenly realm and the asura realm, as we mentioned during yesterday's exam discussion, I have also read some lecture notes from other ancient great masters, and some of you are still privately looking up more materials. Actually, there are many commentaries on the Lotus Sutra. This time our approach is neither too broad nor too brief. It should be just right. So, only the Buddha truly knows the capacities and aspirations of sentient beings. You see, it is also mentioned here just now, this elder knew that he was indeed extremely inferior. So if he were told directly, then he simply wouldn't be able to accept it, finding it utterly incomprehensible and deeply unsettling. That's precisely why it is profoundly important for us to diligently strive to understand the intricate and diverse mindset of all sentient beings. The Venerable Sutra of the Dharani for Protecting the Country profoundly states, sentient beings possess all kinds of desires. Their aspirations are truly countless and immeasurable. The Tathagata's boundless omniscience perceives and knows them all exactly as they truly are, in their complete and unvarnished reality. As for the Tathagata, he completely knows the countless capacities and aspirations of sentient beings. Their thoughts are incredibly diverse. People in our world absolutely do not have this kind of ability. So as for the wise old elder, he also fully understood this particular situation. The only way he could truly guide him was through various things like sweeping dung, effectively using this particular method to genuinely help him. You could certainly put it that way. After the poor son heard this, he was especially happy. In order to remove the accumulated filth and cleanse himself, he was already genuinely willing to live humbly and obediently in his father's house. As for the elder, his loving and ever-watchful father, he would often, with a heart full of longing and anticipation, see his beloved son through the window, gazing out with hope and patience for his return. His elderly father would often and frequently see his beloved son through the window sadly, and he would also think quietly to himself, "My son is especially and remarkably foolish and exceedingly pitiable indeed. Moreover, he takes pleasure in menial tasks and humble chores and enjoys particularly and exceptionally lowly things and trivial matters. Other than the act of removing filth, he has absolutely no interest at all in fine gold, gleaming silver, or any other precious treasures." So what did the elder decide to do then? He deliberately changed into rather dirty and stained clothes, garments that appeared worn and neglected. Holding a specialized tool specifically designed for removing filth and grime in his hand, he then slowly went over to his very own dear beloved son. He very carefully approached him slowly and gently told him to work very diligently indeed always. At first he wisely sent someone else instead, obviously, but much later, when there was really absolutely no other way left available, he himself personally took on the humble appearance of a lowly filth remover. So when we help sentient beings, sometimes we also need to do this. We ourselves, in different situations, for example, Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche in America, when Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche first went there to teach the profound principles of Buddhism to Americans, when he taught the Dharma, they simply wouldn't listen to him at all. Since they simply wouldn't listen at all anymore, he often hung out with these wild hippies frequently, those who really loved to drink heavily and sing loudly together every single day, carrying a few heavy bottles of strong alcohol around, and carelessly muddled around with them constantly. At that time, they really liked him. Then, gradually, he started talking to them about various other things, eventually sharing more details. After they had a common language, he gradually led them to deeply study Buddhism. In the end, among some of his devoted disciples, there were a few individuals who had particularly special and noteworthy backgrounds. On that specific day in the United Kingdom, I met a devoted disciple of Akong Rinpoche. He shared that in the past, he himself had been someone with rather unusual behavior. But later, when his teacher came here, some of his teacher's actions really deeply resonated with him, as if they were very much alike and quite similar. At that particular time, his teacher was a lay person, so he would often go with them to all kinds of different social occasions and various events. Eventually, when the opportune time was truly right, they studied together and meticulously built magnificent temples. Later, they also diligently did a lot of charitable work all around the world and so on. Sometimes the actions of bodhisattvas can also appear like this in different situations. So in order to truly benefit his beloved son, this wise elder had to employ this particular method temporarily, as it was indeed the only viable way to get close to him. That's why we often say truly that this is the case. In different situations, we Buddhists really shouldn't be rigid and inflexible either. We shouldn't be overly conservative, thinking we absolutely can't do anything at all, thinking nothing is allowed. So for those of us who have just started to develop virtuous roots, some of us, including now, have an organization called the Merit Society. But the Merit Society isn't really about performing meritorious deeds. However, every year, we encourage them to at least read a book or to do something, including during the festive New Year celebrations or other significant holidays. They actively take part in some wonderful charitable activities, such as singing beautiful songs, performing lively dances, or doing various other engaging things. In this particular way, this also genuinely counts as a valuable group activity for us, using various methods to truly reach more people effectively at different levels, which is better. Otherwise, if we were to exclusively play a singular exclusive role, we would undoubtedly miss out on a multitude of other valuable and enriching opportunities that could potentially arise. Therefore, we genuinely and sincerely hope that by including everyone here at the esteemed society, many people are actively learning quite a lot nowadays, and it is pretty good overall and satisfactory and encouraging, but honestly, this is still not enough. Not long ago, we conducted a comprehensive survey to see who among us has been diligently studying for a full 10 years. I also personally sent out the survey to everyone, a blessed item containing the hair and clothing of His Holiness. As a kind of memento, I personally gave out a particularly special and unique item to everyone present. This thoughtful gesture should bring immense joy and profound delight to all. In the foreseeable future, we also sincerely hope to keep learning continuously and developing our skills. Of course, as for the way we learn, sometimes it might be that it's not necessarily just one single solitary method. In the past, when we studied, we typically used things like physical CDs and DVDs. When we first started out, many Dharma teachers from Taiwan and other places used audio tapes and gave many teachings, including at that time the stages of the path to enlightenment, Lamrim Chenmo. In 1996, when I was in Chengdu accompanying His Holiness while he was recovering from illness, initially some esteemed Dharma teachers from Taiwan were diligently teaching the profound and comprehensive stages of the path to enlightenment. Following this, there were also several venerable elder monks deeply rooted in the revered Pure Land tradition, who meticulously recorded various essential Pure Land teachings and profound spiritual guidance onto readily accessible cassette tapes for wider dissemination and study. But later, there were VCDs and DVDs, which offered improved quality and convenience compared to earlier formats. But now we might use the cloud or some other means, such as streaming services and online platforms, for accessing and storing content, including for our next step. On one hand, the way we study is relatively by downloading through digital computers, this kind of additional method, and for the long-term preservation of some important materials, we also use hard drives. Perhaps the storage capacity of modern hard drives is significantly larger, and the visual clarity and other important aspects are also considerably better. Although acquiring them might indeed cost some additional money, our Education Office and Dharma Propagation Department don't need to make even a penny of profit. We don't really need it either. It's just about balancing its own financial income and its expenses. If it can be self-sustaining, then maybe it has to be done this way. Otherwise, if I handle it directly here, it would be a bit difficult. So for the sake of real benefit, because of the high definition clarity and such, if we still currently use our old existing household equipment now, including some old televisions nowadays, many old DVD drives are completely gone forever now. A lot of ordinary families simply can't manage it properly anymore today. So through modern computers and sometimes as dedicated practicing Buddhists, we might not always be in exactly the same very difficult situation. If it were all the same situation in the past, we all used tape recorders. Back in 1987, when we went to Mount Wutai, each of us bought a small tape recorder. We felt it was truly, really quite rare. We could easily record the teacher's insightful lectures, and it made us feel very happy and content. Later, when I was giving my lectures in the Sutra Hall, the entire front area was completely full of them. Now it seems there isn't a single one left, and they're not needed anymore. People are much smarter now, more intelligent and discerning, so there's truly no real need to record things anymore. Back then it was all just broken old tape recorders. An elderly monk once specifically asked me to fix a tape recorder for him. I honestly said I didn't know how to fix it at all. He said, "Aren't you commonly called Shifu, a respected master?" Our Han Chinese Shifus, who are generally skilled, all know how to expertly fix these kinds of things. So the way we attentively listen to the Dharma teachings in the future, some aspects might indeed have to change significantly. If we indeed don't change, it seems like we can't keep up with the current times. Times are changing day by day. Every single day there's truly something new and exciting, always constantly being updated and improved upon. As things are updated, we might need to update ourselves too. Otherwise, if we do not take the necessary actions, eventually we will be left with absolutely no viable options. So sometimes when we engage in the process of studying, especially if it is purely for the profound sake of learning and acquiring knowledge, there are certain fundamental things we simply must undertake and accomplish. So as for the old, wise, venerable elder, he was also wearing especially dirty and noticeably grimy clothes and rather unkempt, carrying the necessary tools specifically designed for the careful removal of excrement, and then proceeding to enter into various different and often challenging situations. Sometimes we Buddhists are just the same way. For the benefit of all beings and for our own truly learning, we also need to make some important reforms in our system. When it's truly necessary, when it's time to change, we should change. When reform isn't needed, we also simply cannot just abandon cherished tradition all of the time. Some things are especially good, truly valuable, and worth preserving. Now let me talk a little bit more. Let me just see where I left off. It was only a moment ago in the immediate past that particular elderly gentleman, through his actions and demeanor, caused such a profound disturbance among us that following this unsettling incident, when the unfortunate and impoverished man, who was not present at the exact location where these events transpired, yes, he personally went directly to his side and gently told him, if you do your daily job very well, you can definitely get a good raise. And also was this story actually in India or somewhere else entirely? Sometimes his poor, tired feet, just like how we apply face oil, he would then apply some oil. In Tibetan, it clearly says, "I'll apply double the amount of oil for you." His weary feet could also be generously treated with double the soothing oil. He was also kindly given nourishing food and refreshing drink. Including his soft seat cushion and warm bedding, every single one of these essential items should be meticulously made into thick, comfortable, and supportive mats, carefully prepared for his ultimate comfort and well-being. Very warm, and given to him like this, a truly comforting and much-needed gift. Because he was probably quite poor, perhaps even destitute, he likely didn't have much in the way of clothing to wear, adequate coverings to protect himself from the elements, or a proper bed to sleep on. If you have a good attitude in your work, I can provide you with ample food, comfortable clothes, and warm bedding. Indeed, everything you could possibly require. The wise elder earnestly and patiently persuaded him in this gentle and understanding manner. He encouraged him to work diligently and with great dedication, and not to leave this important place. He spoke to him with such profound gentleness and truly kind words, expressing his deep affection by saying, "You are truly like my own beloved son." This heartfelt interaction, where he offered guidance and expressed such warmth, is actually what we often refer to as the profound and compassionate foremeans of embracing, a fundamental principle for fostering strong and positive relationships. It is also clearly mentioned in the ancient Buddhist scriptures, specifically in the famous Upasika Pure Conduct Sutra text, "Practice generous giving and kind speech daily, act for the benefit of all others, and work together harmoniously. Always carefully use the four means of embracing to gather all beings without any exception whatsoever. This brings great merit indeed. The compassionate elder not only gave valuable material things to the poor son, but also spoke very kindly to him." Some of our Dharma teachers are very good at this. Yeah, and today I bought you all some delicious liangfen, cold jelly noodles, and I must say it's quite nice. Today our entire class had liangfen. Some people might say, no way, why is the Dharma teacher doing this today? It's already so cold outside, why are we eating liangfen? The elder wisely allowed him to gradually come and go. In this way, after 20 years of doing household tasks, he eventually became familiar with all the gold, silver, treasures and jewels. He would know about all the comings and goings and the management inside. But he was still outside the door. He lived alone in a small thatched hut. In his heart, he was still deeply attached to his own profound poverty. He never thought, these are my treasures. He never had such thoughts. Then the father, knowing his son's innermost thoughts, saw that he had gradually become more accepting and open-hearted. After that, he entrusted him with a significant amount of the family's considerable wealth. Later, when the father was on his deathbed, everyone indeed gathered together. At that time, even the local king and ministers were present. The kshatriyas and the lay people were all present there as well. It seemed quite clear that he was about to pass away very soon. In front of everyone, he said, "This is truly my beloved son. He was once very rebellious and completely abandoned me, leaving our home. But after many, many long years, I eventually recognized him. He has now been in my household for 20 years. At first, his primary job was to meticulously clean up all the excrement, and now gradually and with increasing responsibility, he has become the trusted and indispensable steward of our entire household. Previously, he used to reside in a certain bustling city, far from here. In that city, we were separated. Later, he moved through different cities, then finally arrived here. Everything I truly have today, whether it's all the precious people in my house or my jewels, absolutely all of it is freely given to him completely, and he can easily use it however he personally pleases, whenever he truly wants to." Otherwise, let's just stop here and let him truly enjoy it, all right?
Bandharangara Padma Sodargye